The broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
Can I welcome members and officers here at City Hall and the public in the gallery or watching on the webcast to the Oversight Committee. Can I remind participants to turn your phones off and put them in silence? And can I also ask members to ensure electronic devices aren't in front of their mics? Can I ask the clerk, Nicoletta Kemp, to confirm any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received from Assembly Member Bukhari.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Can we note the list of offices held by Assembly members? Thank you. And can I also ask members if they've got any disclosable pecuniary interests in specific items listed on the agenda? Thank you. On to the minutes. Can we confirm the minutes of the meeting of 20th of May 2026 to be signed by me as a correct record? Thanks. And on summary list of actions, can we note the completed and ongoing actions arising from previous meetings of the Oversight Committee and the additional correspondence received? Thanks. These are a couple of longer ones. Under delegated authority, can I ask the committee to note the following recent action taken by the former chair in consultation with the deputy chair and party group lead members under delegated authority to agree the committee's response to the consultation on the proposed plans for the State of London debate 2026? No, thank you. Can I also ask the committee to note the consultation letter from the Senior Manager, Events for London, GLA, and note the response received from the Senior Manager, Events for London, to the committee's letter on arrangements for the State of London debate 2026? Thank you. We're now moving on to part one of our two parts of main business for today. So countering fraud and GLA Group. Can I welcome you, David, to the meeting. Thank you so much for joining us here. David Esling is the Director of Audit, Risk and Assurance at the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. David, do you want to start off by just giving us an overview of what fighting fraud looks like in the GLA, any of the main risks and your assessment of how robust we are?
Okay. Well, it's probably best to start with what internal audit is and what I'm obviously director of within the GLA Group, so that the organisations that we currently provide the internal audit service for. So sitting here today, the GLA, the Metropolitan Police Service, MOPAC itself, which we obviously sit in, the London Fire Brigade, London Legacy Development Corporation, Old Oak Park Royal Development Corporation, and we're just starting the shared service arrangement with the Oxford Street Development Corporation. And we also provide the internal audit service for the National Police Chiefs Council. So out of the GLA family, the only body that we don't provide the internal audit services is for Transport for London. I was hoping that the head of counter fraud was able to make it here today, but for reasons due to illness, he was unable to do that. So that's sort of the provision of the internal audit service. So as part of that, I have a small counter fraud team headed up by a counter fraud manager with 2 counter fraud officers. And what under the internal audit provision, we are a third line body in the 3 lines model. So we're looking at, we from an internal audit perspective, we're looking at governance, risk and control. And as part of our reviews, we build into that the fraud risks. And under the new global internal audit standards, those have enforced and enhanced, should we say, the provisions and the requirements, not just of internal audit, but of senior management and also members of the audit committees or audit panels that the internal audits serve. So that's probably a little bit of background. I mean, I'm willing to take any questions on that, but then I can go into the sort of counter fraud provision. So from a internal audit perspective, we, as part of the standards, we're required to do a risk-based approach, and that's looking at each organisation's key risks. And as part of that, we always look at fraud risk. So take the GLA as an example. They do have their strategic risk register and they have risk registers, but they also have a fraud risk register, which again, on the governance model, is good governance to have that in place. It obviously highlights the key areas of risk that the GLA feel that they're exposed to. And I can probably, obviously for members, well, the key ones are procurement, grants, cyber, but cyber that can take many forms, phishing attacks to actual trying to break through into the systems themselves, so firewalls. What are the other ones? Sorry, just looking down here. So housing grants, so grants are the big grants, recruitment, so HR purposes. So that's the GLA's model, and I would say that's probably mirrored to a lesser or more extent across the bodies that we carry out internal audit for. So taking on the risk-based approach, when we're looking at the key risks of the organisations and which would warrant internal audit activity, that risk information is factored into the building of the internal audit plans for each of the organisations. But I think it's worth stressing that internal audit aren't there to prevent fraud. It's the senior management and the organisations are there to do that. What we can do is add advice, and where unfortunately things go wrong, we've got a small investigative team that can carry out investigations where required. But from that, we can then give advice and control advice where we can improve systems along those lines. So again, happy to take any questions or anything on that. Otherwise,
shall I come in just at that point
please.
to say, David, did I understand you correctly that the main vulnerabilities were procurement, grants, and with cyber attacks?
Yeah,
Is that what
those.
you meant by that?
What, cyber attacks?
Yeah, was it an attack or
well,
just
as in a
giving
phishing?
detail?
So it's cyber. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, phishing. Better
Yeah, so
word
it's
for it.
probably cyber. The use of the word cyber can cover a multitude of facets of attacks on an organisation. In particular, with fraud, it's usually through a phishing attack where somebody's trying to get in. Now that can be an attack on HR, shall we say? That's often one, or it could be just trying to get into a system, a financial element of the organisation. So phishing is probably the one that we would normally come up against where a fraud has been identified.
Right, thank you. And talking about the small investigative team you've got, how often does their time have to be utilised looking into these things? I mean, not an exact number, but say, are we in tens or hundreds or single digits?
Yeah, so that's a good question. As in, what I try to get the team is more preventative. So they offer fraud risk training across the organisations that we carry out the internal audit shared services for. However, yes, there are occasions when frauds are identified. Now, the organisations can either call us in. So bearing in, we're talking of numbers, I would say, depending on which organisation, we're not talking of lots of investigations, maybe 5, 6, because they can take a lot of time.
Is that like in a year period?
Yeah, sorry, that's on an annual basis. But some of the frauds that we have identified, we have investigated. Going back to my earlier point about how internal audit, we then factor that in and maybe look at an area within the business that has had a fraud attack, and then we will carry out an internal audit. So we will be looking at whether the controls have been enhanced due to the fraud activity that was identified, or we're going in to look at whether the governance is also sound. So there's a lot of facets that we do as part of the internal audit. An investigation is very much involved with the identification or where the fraud has been identified, and they will go in and investigate that and obviously come to a conclusion depending on the outcome of that investigation.
Thank you. Sorry, did you want to go on to... Were you going to go on to something else? Sorry, I just wanted to...
Yeah, no, that's fine. What I was going to say was, so as the fraud team themselves, so I think I mentioned about the preventative side, so they offer fraud training, but also the advisory. So part of that, our internal audit standards, our advisory work forms part of that. So it's quite good that we got the counter fraud team that sit under us, so they can go out and give, obviously, fraud advice. So they will offer training specific to the organisations that we audit, depending on the key risk areas. And what I often term is certainly with fraud, there's two areas. One is volume and one is value. So where you're talking of large sums of money, then obviously that you're prone to attack. Volume attacks are often smaller scale and sometimes more staff involved, so gifts and hospitality or expenses. So they're smaller in value, but the volume of them is a lot higher, whereas sometimes the higher value ones are less prevalent. However, when they do occur or when they are identified, then the sums involved are higher and more so than the volume. Although, sorry, when you pick up the volume, they can be just as much as the one single value one. So, you know, the controls that we'd be looking at in them are different. But again, it's to try and prevent ultimately fraud and inappropriate activity.
Thanks. And David, what's your assessment of if there has been a fraud case where it's proven? What's your assessment of how good the GLA and its bodies are, apart from TfL, of getting money back, recouping any money lost?
I would say in the last 12 months there has been success in recovering monies that have gone missing. I think sometimes what we've found is you may have to draw a line under it, so you're still trying to recover the monies, but it's more important to make sure that you have the controls to prevent future attacks of that nature. And it's a learning. I can give some examples because we got the GLA Fraud Forum where we meet with all the GLA family, of which TfL are a key member of that. So the frauds that, or the fraud attacks on the TfL are obviously different to the other organisations. But what we found is the attack may be different from, but there's a lot of similarity in the way that it's, or commonality, should I say, across the organisation. So there's a lot of learning that can be gained from that. And I think one example that's, because it's always evolving, you know, the bad people or the fraudsters are always looking at ways to attack an organisation. And, you know, the private sector is no different than the public sector in some respects on people trying to obviously get monies out of them. But there is an area that we identified, which was a result of COVID, was polygamous working, as it's apparently now called. It used to be dual working, but now it's polygamous. So these are individuals that we found probably commonality with agency staff primarily, where they've got jobs through another number of agencies and local authorities, GLA being one of those, or other public bodies, where they're being paid 2-3 times for doing a role, of which you would say, well, if you're doing that in a number of hours in a day, that's quite impossible. However, that was sort of a new fraud, should we say, that came about. But the actual controls from an internal audit perspective would say, well, you would still expect the HR and line management controls to be there. So just because somebody's working remotely doesn't mean if you're checking in on them that are they there, or if they're not, why are they not there? So it's no different. So in a sense, some of those control aspects just need to be reviewed and understood better with line management. I think for me, that's quite a good example of something that previously somebody comes into work, they're sitting there with remote working, they're not there. So what do you as a line manager, because that's the first line from a control perspective where you'd be going through, and also setting clear objectives and deliverables. You know, if somebody's starting or not being able to achieve those, then questions should be asked, and then you may, as a line manager, ask them to come into the office more frequently just to, you know, help them to get through that. And that's when those sort of areas and that fraud would be identified. So going back to my point, although it was seen as a new fraud, the actual checks and internal controls was the same as they've always been. It's just that maybe somebody wasn't there in person. So it's an interesting sort of dynamic of how things have changed. But some ways, as I say, to keep repeating myself, sorry, but the control factors are still relevant and still pertinent.
Great, thanks, David. I'm going to bring in Assembly Member Prince now.
Thank you. Good morning. Not a trick question, but no. Are there 3 things that you think, if they were implemented, that would happen that would significantly strengthen fraud prevention across the GLA group?
That's an interesting question, because I wouldn't necessarily say there's 3. There's a number of facets that I think on a continuous improvement.
You can have 7 if you like.
Okay. On a continuous improvement basis, going on to the control framework that we'd be looking at, I think going to the example I've just given, line management of individuals, declaration, gifts and hospitality, but procurement and contracts are those are the big areas that, again, there's that, going back to my point about volume and value. So obviously procurement is a key area where if you can get that right with the controls in place, of which I think it's across the GLA family, it's well established. However, you can't sort of sit back on your laurels insofar as one aspect I would often pick on is certainly if you're working in procurement and contracts, is that what I call a tax where you're being invited. So it's that gifts and hospitality. Why are those being? So you may be declining them, but why is a particular individual or a company inviting you to lots of things? So having that information, even if you've declined it, so they may pick on a number of people. That for me is a good source of data that can say, well, why are they doing that? What gain are they trying to get?
That is a very good point, actually, a very good point. So, but how would we be able to, or how would you, using whatever system, how would you be able to capture that? Because if you were able to capture that across the GLA, that would actually be quite powerful, wouldn't it?
Yes, and it is, because where you have to declare your gifts and hospitality, so that information is already captured. As assembly members, you're always having to give the gifts and all the hospitality that you've approved. The same with senior officers and same with officers. Yeah.
But the point I found most interesting actually was the declined gifts. I don't declare my declined gifts, obviously, because I haven't had them.
Yes.
But there could be some
What
mileage.
have you been offered?
But it would be, but in all seriousness, it would be interesting, isn't it, to see what members are being offered, and senior officers as well, and if there was some kind of way of logging that, because as you say, that could build a very informative picture, couldn't it?
Yes, and by me mentioning that shows that I think that's a very key aspect, and some organisations do have that in place. I did work at TfL before I came here, so it's 15 odd years ago, and that was a key area because of the volume again of procurements that they had. They actually recorded the decline. I don't know if they still do that, but certainly when I was there, and that was a really, hence me making the point, a really good, valuable piece of information and data where you can look at that. Going to your other point, how can, from an internal audit perspective, we would look at that, and I would look at that as a control that would be, I think, the organisation should look into. Again, it's down to management to either accept that or not, but that is something we have made previously in the past across organisations. You may regret, because that's the other thing. Because sort of going back to my example of 20 odd years ago, when this was a hot topic, the decline when you've got senior members who are saying, "Well, I'm getting 10 a day on these," and I'm just, my PA or whatever's declining them, so that you do then come up against that problem, should we say? Whereas if you're a procurement officer, you're probably not getting that sort of volume of invites to or hospitality.
Who knows? Interesting. Thank you very much. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thanks. Assembly Member Mahfouz.
Thank you. You've spoken quite a bit about controls and cross-working, as I'd expect you to. A lot of it is also about accountability. Do you feel there's a clear centre of accountability across the group at the moment?
Yeah, I do. I think there's probably still improvement to do, and that's again through our work we'd identify that. But the governance structures that are in place, and I mean in particular, I was reviewing the GLAs with all the simple things like a whistleblowing policy, the code of ethics, and access to myself and the team. Those being in place, the login of gifts and hospitality. So those governance frameworks are in place across the group. We will do a expenses audit, we will do a gifts and hospitality audit, and there often are maybe some improvements to be made. Sometimes it's just keeping up to speed with latest issues, developments, whatever in the world, and certainly on a fraud perspective. But we do go in and we will review that and obviously give either recommendations or advice where improvements can be made. I think one of the main stumbling blocks often is the review of policies. So I think you should be looking at least annually. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to change it. It just means it should be reviewed, and is it still reflective of what the organisation needs to do? That's often where, there's a disparity, or sometimes things fall down in just the length of time that those are reviewed and updated. However, I think there's a lot of learning has been gained across the group, and that has improved.
I mean, presumably on policy reviews, you set an expectation as internal audit as to when they should be reviewed, and if they're not, or sufficiently amended within that time frame. Yes,
although we will. It's not our responsibility to do that. Again, it comes down to management. So if they've got a review date, then we would say, well, have those policies been reviewed? But it's the responsibility of the policy owner to ensure that occurs. So I think we need to always be careful what the role of internal audit, because it's where we're internal audit. Well, we were there, but not necessarily at that particular juncture, so to speak, where something occurred. So I think it's the organisation, and the new standards actually are very explicit in the distinct roles of internal audit, of senior management, and again the audit panel or audit committee members as well in that process.
And sorry, just going back to my first question,
yes.
You talked a lot about the controls being across the board, but what I was asking about was accountability. So where there are failings, and obviously you pull those out in terms of your audit reports, do you feel that they are taken seriously and implemented effectively?
Yes, I do. And again, part of that is reporting to the various, either a panel or an audit committee. Obviously, the panel at the GLA is assembly members. In audit committees, it's usually non-executives. So they will be looking at the implementation of recommendations, and they're challenging that. If we report that, when as part of the process, we do a follow-up report. Now, if the recommendations haven't been implemented or by the dates given, or other aspects of as part of the follow-up process have been discovered, then we would raise that with the audit panel or the audit committee of those particular organisations. And my experience is certainly the organisations that we're responsible for, that's certainly taken very seriously. And I can sit there and we report, but it's then the audit committee or audit panel will challenge the officers appropriately on why they haven't done something. So the quick answer now, yes, the accountability is improved.
Yeah, and of course, I think we're going to be covering in a moment. Obviously, those arrangements are changing going forward as well. So I'll hand back to the chair. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Going to move on to internal audit arrangements now. Nice segue, and pass over to Assemblymember Russell.
Yeah, thank you and good morning. So I'm interested in the anti-fraud training that your directorate is providing for employees across the GLA group. And so I just wonder if you can give an overview of that training, but also any evidence that you can that you have on the take-up and the impact of that training.
So we offer to answer your question, so we offer the counter-fraud training differs across each of the organisations, but the GLA is very much focused on grant training, and because of some fraud issues that we have identified over the past couple of years, that's very much focused, as I say, on the grants and contracts, and the take-up has been excellent. Unfortunately, if Richard was here, he would be able to give you probably some numbers, actual numbers. But it's been excellent, and the feedback has been really good as well, insofar as the understanding of issues and fraud risks that should be reviewed. So again, potentially control failings. So I'd like to say that, as an example, we had a couple of issues with the skills boot camp within the GLA. Mm-hmm. Part of the training has identified those issues, and we've just going to part of my point I made earlier, we've carried out an internal audit now of skills boot camp to see any improvements they've done in the control framework, and that has been a really positive result. So I'd like to say, you can't say ever, but the information that an advisory and fraud information that we've provided has highlighted to staff the importance of certain checks and controls that need to be in place, and why they are doing certain things and why they should be doing it. So, yes, so it has been really well received, but we may see, well, I'd like to see some reduction in those issues going forward, which I'd like to think will be there, but, you know, ask me in 12 months and I probably give you a positive outcome of the impact of the training.
Yeah. What about the arrangements for sharing those learnings and the knowledge that is coming up in the different bits of the GLA that you're providing all this support to? And yeah, kind of making sure that any good practice lessons are kind of rolled out across the whole GLA group. Can you give us a bit of an overview on that?
So yes, I can. So as the GLA group, there's the GLA Fraud Forum, which is all members of the GLA family attend that, including TfL. So the head of fraud for TfL and Richard Ward, who's my account fraud manager, sort of have control of that meeting, and the members are across the GLA family. I also attend as well. And as part of that, there's a lot of sharing of information. As an example, at the last one, there was another fraud issue is the use of AI for people applying for roles and jobs. So that's been identified. It's been an issue across some of the organisations. That information shared, and members of that group have gone away to look at those particular fraud issues and could they occur in their organisation. I mean, that's a small example, but there is a lot of learning. So that's the GLA Fraud Forum. We're also members of the London Borough's it's LBFIG, so it's London Borough's financial group. Financial. I'll have to come back to you on that one. And as part of that, again, that's sharing across a wider base of public sector organisations, but that's very much focused with London boroughs. So we also feed into that, and again, there's learning that we capture from that.
Can you give an example of that kind of learning?
So again, I mentioned earlier on about the polygamous working. So just one of the issues that we had was a member working, somebody working in one of the part of our GLA family was also working in a London borough, and by meeting up like that, there was a few sort of clicks in the head. Oh, wait a minute, I might know this individual. So that, you know, just a simple bit of identifying that individual, but again, the learning and just.
You mean two jobs at the same time?
Two jobs at the same time.
Two full-time jobs at the same time.
Full-time jobs at the same time, and that's now.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, going back to my point earlier, it's, you know, where the controls. So where's the line management control? Just because the individual's working remotely, you can still phone in, dial in. Again, it's always the well-being side of things. You should be doing that. But yeah, how can someone be doing two? And these were quite highly paid roles as well. They weren't something you could do quite easily and sit away. They required some. Without talking, we have reported on that, but the individual, both organisations said, yeah, we did notice issues with their output. So, ironically, yes. So the control aspects, if they had been asking him to come in, I think what actually raised the flag in that particular case was they were being asked to come in, and they always had an excuse for not being able to come into the office. So again, some red flags were starting at that point. But that's a minor example. But again, that's sharing of that information and an understanding of some of the issues that are currently, you know, occurring across the public sector generally, but also probably the private sector. But we got that feed through into that and learning.
And yeah, there's also presumably well-being elements to that for someone who's taking that kind of behaving like that. It's that there's presumably some support available to them. Okay, so would you say that the collaborative arrangements with organisations across London are effective? Are there any things there you want to improve or see more of or less of?
I think they're effective. I think they can probably be more effective. But again, it's the time and the resources as well sometimes in this. So it's easy to go to a meeting maybe every six weeks or a couple of months. You have a good hour's conversation. Some of it's the follow-up side of things. So I think, but again, people are busy. Resources are. You may have. I mean, I've got three counter fraud people in the team. I could probably double that, and you know, you may see future value, but you've got to balance that against, you know, budgets and
Scale of
resources.
loss.
So you've got, you know, and the trouble is with fraud, you don't know when they've been really effective because nothing's happened. So it's quite difficult to balance it off. When you've recovered something, you've got the question earlier: what recoveries are we getting? There's some monetary value to that, but when you're with prevention, is less easy to well, it's not less easy to identify. It's less easy to put a value on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Georgie.
Thank you, Chair. David, how many whistleblowing referrals relating to fraud have been received in each of the last 5 years?
I don't have that information to hand. I think that's probably it's part of the GLA whistleblowing process. The whistleblower has an opportunity to direct that to myself, so I will know any whistleblowing allegations that will directed to myself. I couldn't tell you how many the GLA or across the GLA family received.
Well, how many have you received?
I think in the last 2 years, and I literally will have to say the last 2 years, I think it's about three or four. I'd have to look back at the timelines of those. And again, some of those are when they've been reviewed, they are more sort of internal, so they're more HR issues or bullying, harassment, grievance type of things. So there's another appropriate policy where they should be directed to. So I think we've dealt with two. I'd have to come back to you on this. I think we've dealt with two that have been what I call internal audit, investigative type reviews.
And to me, you know, once again, either, you know, the GLA is absolutely clean as a whistle. You know, I find it odd that it's been 2 to 3 over the last couple of years, and nothing of significance. And when I say that, I mean towards issues within the organisation, fraud and things like that. You know, leave aside the HR issues, and that's very much what you've just outlined, an HR problem, not a you problem. You know, in terms of that, does that not strike you as a little bit odd?
So without the figures, I only know what a directive.
I'm just talking about you, yeah.
Yeah.
So
do I feel that's odd? Not necessarily, because there are other avenues that information can come through. It doesn't have to come through whistleblowing. We will get other allegations made, or from our work, or from external aspects. So whistleblowing is obviously a framework that can be utilised. Allegations of fraud, I would say, across the family, GLA family. I don't have the figures to hand, but I would say it's fairly static for allegations of fraud, because sometimes they fall into another policy area.
So they could be picked up in other places.
Exactly. It's not saying that it's unusual that they may seem low. It's more a case of, are they being, as you say, being picked up elsewhere.
And in terms of confidence of staff to come forward, do you believe our framework is robust enough that people do feel confident to come forward without, you know, a risk of losing their jobs? Because, you know, I'm sure many Assembly members hear it all the time. Mm-hmm. In any organisation, not just in this place, you know, I would have come forward, but I'm worried about losing my job, or, you know, I might not get that promotion that I want. You know, do you feel that things are robust enough here that protects people's livelihoods?
I think the whistleblowing policy and the framework that it works within it is sound. Whether people feel comfortable in blowing the whistle, I do understand that, because I've experienced a couple elsewhere where they said they want to blow the whistle, but they don't feel confident in blowing the whistle in that organisation. Is there another way I can blow the whistle? And there usually is another area they can do that. Right. I think the framework's there. I think the framework's robust. I think it's sound. Whether people still feel confident to blow the whistle, all I can say is that the framework is there, and if they do blow the whistle, it will be taken seriously. That's the one thing I can say.
No, I appreciate the latter part, taking it seriously, but my question is more, let's say I'm asking you, David, you know, whoever your line manager is, I saw their hand in the till, Mary, you know, would you feel confident going down that process that your anonymity would be retained and that it wouldn't harm your career prospects?
Under the policy, I think the answer would be yes.
Okay.
I think it is yes, because you can retain your anonymity. The problem we have is we will go back to a whistleblower through the mechanisms they've and say, we need more information. Are you willing to engage with us? We will ensure that we keep, but you have to become non-anonymous, if that's a phrase, because we need to talk to you, and we get that, and we have had occasions where that. But all we can do from my side, and it comes back to our independence. I think I've got no. I'm more interested in the issue rather than telling tales, shall we say, for want of a better phrase. So the individual can come to us and we can guarantee that they will be kept, that issue will be kept anonymous. But we do need to get further information just because it will help any investigation that we would be undertaking.
No, I think that's quite reassuring. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Assembly Member Prince, who's going to ask some questions about the arrangements and then focus on the reports. Yeah, recent reports, yeah.
Ask about the whistleblowing.
And then we can move on to the next section.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. So, David, how many whistleblowers do you know that have been paid off and then made to sign non-disclosure agreements?
I'm not aware of any.
Have you looked at employees who have left the business and been asked to sign non-disclosure agreements at all?
I haven't, but you are now raising some issues that are starting to...
Because I'm aware of one very serious issue when one of the employees was onto something and that person was literally paid a large amount of money, asked to leave the organisation and sign a non-disclosure agreement. I can't tell you who that is because I don't want to jeopardise that person.
I'm not aware of that in that particular individual case, but
I suspect not. But I certainly would recommend that you do have a look at reasons why people are asked to sign non-disclosure agreements. I think it's a very weird thing that we do that as a business, and that to me is very suspicious.
Okay, thank you. I will. All I can offer is I will take that away and obviously, think and review and look at, from our perspective, whether that's what if anything, we could do.
Thank you. So moving on, an overview of National Fraud Initiative and how GLA group bodies are involved in it. So, how do we look at national fraud, and how do we sort of protect ourselves? Do we look into national fraud and say, "Oh, whoops, that could have happened to us"?
So, all members of the GLA family that we have responsibility for take part in the National Fraud Initiative. Number one, as a process, it's very, very successful. We identify the organisations, identify not necessarily fraud as in its entirety, but also things like duplicate payments, as an example, or pensioners where the family may not have informed the pension body that they've passed away. But it's really good as a data matching exercise. It gives us lots of information. I mean, I do have some examples here that have been given. So the 26-27 programme is just about to start, but the 24-25 National Fraud Initiative, again across the family, we recovered about just under £500,000 in actual monetary terms. The pension issue is quite an interesting one, because by stopping pension payments for correct reasons, it's been extrapolated that that's actually made roughly about £4 million saving, because those payments haven't continued paying. I couldn't tell you how that figure's been arrived, but that's something that we have received. So that work and that's done, and that data matching as part of the National Fraud Initiative really does bear fruit. And taking your point about learning from that, improvements have been made to ensure that address data is kept up to date, as when people are leaving the organisation, their payroll is, they cease to be paid. You know, I know it sounds probably fairly simple, but it raises issues which you wouldn't expect that to happen, but in some cases it does. So, you know, it's very effective for identifying certain issues like that.
Sort of going over again. So there was a national fraud initiative that identified over 1,600 matches, but there were no recoveries. Doesn't that sort of raise a few questions?
No, because it's a data match. So what you'll find sometimes, you're doing an address match, so it will throw up, there may be an issue here. The team then will investigate that and find, actually, an example, my polygamous working, you'll get a lot of people having two roles or whatever. When you actually identify it, you'll see, well, actually, it's because they're being paid, take an assembly member as an example, of being paid as an assembly member, and they may be paid with a local authority as part of the role. But that throws up a data match, and it's investigated, and then it's found because there's reasons for it, but the effect is the raw data, and those matches are raw data, and then each one of those is investigated. Duplicate payments, again, that's a good one because it will pick up on those, but some of those, it isn't actually a duplicate payment, it's a frequent payment, and it's just the same amount. But again, it throws that information and it's investigated and then closed off.
Do we benchmark our performance on the NFI outcomes against any other authorities at all?
I haven't got that information. That's something.
No, I'm not asking for the information.
No, I haven't got that information, but I'm not aware that we actually do, because that's something that would come from the NFI themselves. But I will look into that and see whether there is comparability across public sector organisations throughout the country, and that I would guess there is, but I haven't seen that information.
Okay. All right. Look, thanks, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member McCartney.
Yes, thank you. In the past year, you've produced reports that have highlighted two significant cases in the skills field where there has been some issues, and for relatively large amounts of money. To what extent are these abnormal, and what do these cases reveal about vulnerabilities?
So the skills bootcamp sort of touched on that already. Yeah. So they're interesting in that it's agencies that the grant money, so it's government grant money that comes to the GLAs, and then you've got providers providing that service. What we found were those providers in those cases were providing training, but when they were reclaiming monies, the individuals or the numbers of individuals they said were attending these courses didn't exist. So what we've done is an audit of that. So those were the issues. They were identified. Those providers have ceased to be offered, claim the monies. From an internal audit perspective, we've now gone in and looked at the controls in place. And some of that is going back to some of my simple aspects of control. Some of it's just following up, maybe doing a spot check at a training event and seeing, wait a minute, there's 20 people here. Wait a minute, there's only 5. So where are the others? They can't all be unwell on the same day, sort of thing, and you follow it up on that. But that's a dip sampling. So there's other control aspects that are being implemented within that arena, and part of that's being picked up as the training. So a lot of learning, unfortunately, from those cases, but a lot of learning has been achieved and now has been taken forward. So again, the preventative side of things is now much improved.
And is there any particular areas of the GLA where fraud is more common? Would you say skills is more common, for example, than MOPAC or anything else? It
probably is, but if you look across the family, it's usually, going back to my value volume, where's the money? That's where a fraudster is going to be attacking. So a grants arena, people, individuals were probably looking at how can I get into that and maybe gain monetary or monies from that, from having a ghost company or a ghost provider or something, whatever phraseology you want to use. But fraudsters out there, no matter what organisation, will be looking at where's the money, where can I get the money? So where's the biggest pots? So the GLA's obviously grants is a big area, and in other organisations it may be contracts and procurement. So you'll see different players, shall we say, attacking the organisation. So it's just being aware. Going back to my earlier point about the fraud risks. So each organisation identifies their fraud risks and then look at the areas where they were most vulnerable. And that's where from an audit, we would be looking at those and seeing if those controls that they've got in place are effective and feed that into our audit planning mechanisms.
Okay. And can I ask, when you make your reports, are your recommendations always accepted or not? And what happens if you've identified a risk and the organisation doesn't accept it? Is there a further process?
So management always have the right to not accept something, but they need to give good reason for not doing that. But we've got the audit panel at the GLA, we've got audit committees across those members will challenge officers. Yeah. And as I say, as part of that, we do a follow-up review. Again, as part of our standards, we do a follow-up. And it's usually members, certainly on the GLA, will be asking the officers why this is a follow-up and you still haven't implemented it. So that level of challenge, I think, is good. And then we also retain the recommendations database of implementation. So again, that's fed through to panel members.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I just follow up on that point that you're just making to the Assembly member around whether your recommendations are accepted? You kind of said, but are they accepted? Because there's a difference, obviously, between not being implemented yet and somebody saying, no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I would say 99% are accepted. It's very, very unusual for them not to be accepted. However, from a professional point of view, is just because somebody's, as an example, won't accept it doesn't mean we take it out of the report. We leave it in the report and say it's not accepted, and then they're answerable to an audit committee or audit panel on why they haven't accepted that recommendation.
Okay, thanks. But are you satisfied in that 1% of cases that the answers that are coming back to you are justified?
Yes, because we do push that. Part of it is, why aren't you accepting that? Now, if it's because there's a resource, they may be accepting the risk, but then you're looking at the organisation's risk appetite to get into all those factors, and that's where we would challenge that, whether it's not being accepted. They then have to give good rationale for not accepting it, and then they're answerable to, well, ultimately to the public, but to as I say, Assembly members on the audit panel or the audit committees that we also serve.
Thank you. Assembly Member Georgie.
Thank you. Just off the back of your exchange with Assembly Member McCartney, I put it to you that I feel like adult skills is always going to be more susceptible, right? For the simple reason that it's easy to set up a bogus college than it is to set up a dodgy GP service. The police offer grants, but effectively it's relatively restricted because it's quite small, as you said. You go where the money is. So in terms of where your efforts generally lie in these pots of funding, do you have a more honed-in focus on adult skills than you do anything else?
Yes, is the quick answer. Again, going back to the risk-based approach that we applied to our audit planning, that area of the GLA, we will always be undertaking review and audit, of which as I say, the skills bootcamp will be coming to the next audit panel of that. And we have seen a real improvement in that. That doesn't mean we will stop internal audit focus in that area. It just means that it has improved. But you're absolutely right. The fraud risk is always somebody setting up a bogus company. But going back to the fraud risk training, the officers who have attended that are now probably more aware of the issues, of the fraud issues, than, not saying they weren't aware of them before, but it's at the highlight, it's the forefront of their minds now that actually we probably do need to do some dip sampling. We do need to ensure that we don't just pay over because an invoice has arrived. We do need to check that, you know, that event or that training event took place. So that it's just feeding in some of those control aspects.
I just think to myself, with the advent of AI, we could, I mean, these are lucrative contracts. I mean, what's the budget now? About around 350 million, something like that, you know, and effectively, even when the government ran it, and now the Mayor of London's running it, you know, it is straight grant. You know, the leeway that we have on it is relatively limited. We've top sliced quite a bit for that team to operate. So then I think to myself, you know, why are we not asking for as much information as possible in terms of people entering these schemes and completions? And I appreciate it creates more work and bureaucracy. Well, if it saves taxpayer money, you know, that's a good direction to go in, isn't it?
Absolutely, and you're talking my language, ironically, because that's the control aspects. But it has. I do understand from the business side, they do have to weigh up the resource side of things. But you know, the AI is a really good example. Something, you know, from an internal audit perspective, we're grappling with that across obviously the areas that we review. Certainly, this is a good example, but there's still no. I think just picking up the phone and calling an individual, which is what we've done. Say, did you attend this course? You know, and it's a simple what course often. Never heard of them. Or I did apply for a course 3 years ago, so their name's been, you know, reused to but you can do those sort of spot checks. So there's that's a very simplistic way of doing it, and you don't have to do it to all. As soon as a provider understands that could happen, they're less likely. That's the prevention side of it. Less likely to do that. But those are some controls that you can implement in those sort of areas.
Okay, well, I appreciate it's coming to audit, which I sit on, so we can look at that a bit closer then. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. I just wanted to pick up on some of this. I think you've talked a lot about the bad actors, especially in terms of adult skills and going there. But how do you, in your position, make that judgment between bad management and bad actors? And where is that line in terms of fraud? So, for example, where money's just mismanaged or not used correctly, but maybe innocently isn't the right word because it's still public money, but you see where the direction, as opposed to someone actively setting up a bogus college, those are clear, you know, but there's a grey here, and how do you make that distinction of where to step in?
I think the step in is going back to my earlier point where we've got the investigative team who, an allegations made, will go into that. From the internal audit side of things, we're looking at the controls, and that would highlight either lack of controls, and that's potentially, we say that's a management issue, or other controls picking up on bogus companies. So it's that framework that we'd look at as part of the internal audit process, and one of those is securing assets management of the area, and we would look at all of those as part of an internal audit review. So we would be picking up on for management issues, or would be picking up on issues or control issues. So the two are sort of interlinked, but they are also separate. So if there was poor management, that would be picked up as part of a review.
And kind of on that point, the recent issues over the last couple of years, the issues with funding for Pride in London, I think, has fallen into that bracket of where do you draw the line of bad management or bad actors. Have you and your team had any involvement with that grant funding?
We haven't had any involvement with that particular area, but we have obviously undertaken reviews of grants and funding for events. And going back to the earlier point, what learning? So learning would come from the reviews that we've done and would be fed into other areas. But we haven't particularly looked at that particular grant.
Assembly Member Mafuz.
Thanks very much. Having delivered some skills funding services previously under ESF, European Social Funding, very conscious actually it was a heavily bureaucratic auditing process that we had to undergo, and so very clear expectations from the start on a regular basis as to what you had to evidence. And given what you said, do you and the providers have an expectation historically of heavy bureaucratic burden on it. Is that what you implement at the moment, or is it different?
Are we talking about when we review a provider or the
Just the standard
framework?
controls that you put in place for those size contracts.
So we, looking at the control framework, that again, coming back to, we'd say, well, you may need to, from a management perspective, it's a judgment call and a resource call. So it comes down to the risk appetite. So going to the bureaucracy side of it, if it's seen that, oh, they have to fill out 10 forms to get X number of X percentage of monies. However, if they fill out 5, they will still get that, but they don't have to go through a certain process. That's a management call. We may suggest that there's a high risk there, but the management may say we're willing to take that risk as a risk appetite because we don't have the resources, and they'll play it off. However, I will go back to some of the points to say you can implement other ways of doing that, dip sampling or reviews. So you're not doing a 100% check, but you can dip sample. Although with data analysis technology, of which we use, you can now pick up and start doing almost 100% sampling checks, which we were able to do, say, in a payroll area, whereas previously you were doing statistical sampling. Now we can almost do a 100% check, or can do 100% checks on data, which is, again, that's something, because those tools are available. So they're available to others, but also available to us, which is really helpful.
And are they being implemented on a business as usual basis now for this size contract?
Well, we use that for internal audit work. On that example, I don't know whether that data is being utilised in that way. But again, there is technology there. It will probably come down to a funding issue again, whether that's being utilised in those areas. But the technology is available.
I mean, the benefit of the service that you operate is it's across the group, obviously TfL excluded, but the benefits of, if you're implementing a new service benefiting from AI and what have you, could be implemented across the whole group, could it not?
Yes, yeah. So anything that is one of the advantages of having a independent internal audit service where we develop something, or we have something in place that we can then utilise across the family. We haven't. We're at early stages of looking into AI at the moment, by the way. So, yeah, because there are so many advantages there, but we again, there's a cost implication as well of implementing that.
No, fair enough. And in terms of the, I guess on the flip side of that, sometimes we've got grants, obviously, which are 6-figure, 7-figure sums. On the other side, you might have a small charity or small organisation which gets grant funding for, where they want to make sure all of that money goes into the frontline services that are providing critical support to people on a day-to-day basis. How do you make sure that the controls are proportionate?
Thank you. Is that it's appropriate and proportionate. So again, dip sampling for smaller organisations probably much more relevant, rather than where it's larger and the sums are bigger. A classic internal audit control is segregation of duties. If I go to a small organisation and there's one finance person there, you say, well, you've got to employ another one because you've got segregation duties. It just doesn't work like that. But there are other ways that you ensure that those. As I say, the dip sampling is often a good way for the grant provider to implement.
Do you have good practices to percentage of your time as a member of staff, for example, that you might have to spend on bureaucracy that would be proportionate? Or
bureaucracy
insofar as, if let's say I was a project manager for a project that was supporting people with domestic violence and so on, but I was spending half of that time having to fill in Excel spreadsheets or getting everything uploaded onto a system.
I don't have that information, but I would expect the area that's providing that would have that information. And again, that comes back to the organisation's risk appetite. So that would be fed into that. That call really of whether we reduce the bureaucracy, but we're going to have to accept the risk by doing that. And that's a management call. That's not an unacceptable. I'm not going, from an audit perspective, I'm not going to come in and say you shouldn't be doing that, but I would be saying, is that within your risk appetite and your risk tolerance? Then that's where we would sort of come into it. Because if it's outside of that, then obviously we would report on that and flag it.
I'm just going to come on to a couple of changes recently. One was, first of all, in terms of the new legal advice on data sharing. So there's the new recognised legitimate interests, which can allow you to data share under the Data Protection Act. What are the implications of that to, to the legal advice that we've had?
So, yes, so we So legal advice that we've received has confirmed that that personal data can be shared for the purposes of fraud where it's been identified, prevention and detection, but that's on a voluntary basis across the organisation. So if we are doing an audit with the GLA and we wanted to say, have some shared information with the London Fire Brigade, they would have to be happy with that. So, but we've got that informal arrangement and agreement to do that where necessary. I think that's so it's voluntary. So that's the voluntary bit. But all the organisations in GLA we audit are happy to do that. But the legal advice is we can kind of do that. The only area that the exception is the Met Police, and that's because they have additional statutory powers that they can. That we can utilise and they can utilise.
So we've got formal voluntary arrangements across the group bar the Met Police, is that right?
They're not formal voluntary arrangements. It is where we would ask for data that we can share that. So we haven't got something formal or even it's more informal where we would, as I say, it's a data sharing exercise and we can do that if we've identified a potential fraud in an area and it may cross another GLA family member, and we would ask them for information. That voluntary sharing of data, which they are able to do. So, for data protection purposes, they're not falling foul of it. However, they have the right not to share it.
So, at the moment, it's on an ad hoc, as and when basis.
It's an as and when basis.
And what's your opinion on that? Should there be a carte blanche?
Yes, that's something to certainly take forward. But again, the National Fraud Initiative, where we're doing the big data sharing, there are those other areas that data is shared and utilised across those bodies. It's something we are looking into. But at the moment, we do have that agreement with those organisers across the family.
And one of the biggest controls, obviously, financial controls, and we talked about some of the big ticket items, and one of the things that you would normally build into any contract is the terms under which payments are released upon delivery of the outcomes that have been agreed as part of the contract and so on. The new rules that are going to be coming into place as part of legislation coming forward will be around making sure that payments are within a reasonable period. How might that impact in terms of the contracts going forward? I mean, clearly you want to make sure that there's a balance there in terms of particularly small organisations getting paid within a reasonable time frame to be able to pay their staff and so on.
I think that's what it is. We'd go in and review a contract arrangement, and part of that would be the payment terms. Are they in line with the current legislation and legislative requirements? So we'd be looking at that, and I would say that there's no reason for payments to not take place unless there is evidence of maybe impropriety. But taking your point, that there's no reason, as long as that's written into or expressed in the contract, and as part of the contract, good contract management would ensure that the arrangements within the contract are being met, all the contract conditions.
Thank you. I think the final question I had, I think you've answered really in terms of Assemblymember Prince's question around what recommendations you make about strengthening anti-fraud measures across the GLA group. Is there anything else you wanted to add on that front?
It's something we're continuously working with. I mean, the GLA Fraud Forum, got members from TfL. Obviously, we've got our own counter-fraud members, but also members across the GLA family who attend that. We're always looking at where improvements can be made, where fraud risks are or new fraud risks are being identified, and we feed that into it's cross-fertilisation of those risks and understanding of those risks across each of those organisations.
And just bringing it back to one of the points, a few of the points actually that were raised earlier. So talked about data sharing with legitimate interests across the family. You also talked about the relationship that we've got with London boroughs earlier as well. So for example, if there was somebody who was an employee who wasn't paying their council tax, for example, at council level. How do we make sure that we're doing those checks on a regular basis and cross-referencing those with the information that we have?
That would, are we talking about an employee that is fallen?
So, for example, an employee at the GLA,
Yeah,
but
it's not
a
paying.
local borough, obviously we don't collect the council tax, the local
No, so you
boroughs do.
wouldn't know. Again, the National Fraud Initiative would probably identify that. Again, it comes down to a vetting process. But that, as an example, if it's not picked up in those two, you wouldn't, as an organisation, GLA wouldn't necessarily know about that until that individual has been identified. But then they're possibly moving into, from an HR perspective, a gross misconduct, bringing the GLA into disrepute by not paying, as an example, by not paying their council tax for the borough that they're living in.
Thank you very much.
I wonder who you might mean. That was the last question for today. So can I just thank you, David, because I think that you gave us excellent answers today, and I can tell you've been really honest with us and open to taking things away. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note the report as background to put in questions to the invited guests and the subsequent discussion? And in addition to this, can I ask the committee to agree a delegation of authority to me as chair in consultation with deputy chair and party group leads to agree any output arising from this discussion? Agreed. Thanks. We are joined in the chamber by Beacon Tree Primary from Dagenham. So thank you for coming to see us today. We've just been talking about fighting fraud, which is where people are taking public money for things they shouldn't be, like setting up schools that don't really exist and things like that. But we're going to take a break now. So Richard, do the kids want to come take a photo in here? Yeah? Okay. And members, we will come back to do the workforce report at 11:10. So give it like 5 minutes. Thank you. Can I welcome everybody back to the part 2 of the meaty business of the Oversight Committee today. We are now going to look at the GLA workforce report for the year ending 31st of March 2026, and I'd like to welcome to the chamber Phil Graham, the Executive Director for Growth, and Justine Kenny, the Chief People Officer, Chandru Dissanayake, Executive Director for Strategy and Communications, Deanne Trammer, Executive Director for Corporate Resources and Business Improvement, and Tim Steer, Executive Director for Housing and Land. I don't know who really wants to kick us off, maybe with just a short overview of the workforce report, or any first thoughts from it yet? Yeah.
So thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points I would want to pull out of the workforce cover report that we've sent through to you. First of all, that the report for March 2026 does exclude any of the work that has been done in relation to the Savings and Efficiencies Programme. So the data cut is from the 31st of March, and therefore the changes in that programme, which Mary Hartley and myself attended recently to oversight, will not be reflected in the data. We have committed that at the end of the programme we will come back and give a fuller update on the impact of those changes. So just to flag that those changes will not be shown in the reports that you have in front of you. The only other point I would like to just pull out is around the change in the London benchmark data. So across the group, the GLA group, a decision has been made by the Group Collab Board to set the benchmark for the staffing profile against London's economically active population for all organisations in the GLA group. So just to flag a slight change in the way those calculations are made, to note in this current report. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you. And did you want to say anything on the representation data within this? It seems a mixed picture and progression. So, for example, at senior levels, there's an overrepresentation of women, but when it comes to ethnic and minority groups, there is a significant drop-off for those than those in the lower bands. Did you want to say anything about your takings or your summary of that data?
If I could just pick that up, thank you, Chair. So I think that overall the headline figure has been sort of reasonably consistent. We have 40.4% of staff now from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds, which is actually the highest level that we've recorded in our pay gap reports to date. We still see declaration rates continuing to increase, but obviously our aim is to be representative across the organisation and at all levels. So overall, we think we're in a reasonably good position, but of course we see differences across different parts of the organisation, in part as a result of different labour markets across different professions and different groups across different directorates and units. So we know that there is still some work to do, and we monitor this really closely. And colleagues, as we get further into the discussion, I think we'll pick up particular challenges across their areas. But overall, we are kind of confident that we're seeing pretty good position. We just need to drill down into specific challenges across different areas of the organisation.
Yeah, and kind of continuing on that thread, is there anything that you wanted to say around pay gap data?
Well, of course, the pay gap data that's in the report is based on some of our most recently published pay gap data, which goes back to March 25. So we're currently working now on the pay gap data that will be published this year. So we're now working through what that's telling us and the action plan that we'll publish shortly. So that's a bit of a work in progress at the moment.
Is your expectation that there will be an improvement in the data?
I think we would certainly hope so across some areas. I think we would recognise that there were probably pockets where we need to do further work. But as I say, we're working that up now in terms of that action plan. So you'll see that later in the year.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Assembly Member Georgie.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, where last time I think Deanne went through this with Tunde, I know the position in this place is you can identify as whatever you want. You know, when you, Justine, mentioned the 44%, I think you said, of staff that are ethnic minority, is that 44% people that have self-defined as an ethnic minority in their forms? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 40.4.
40.4, sorry.
But yes, it's based on their declarations to
Fine.
the organisation, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Assembly Member Baker.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, so I've got some questions, a couple of questions on the parts of the workforce report about recruitment. So there's obviously lots of information about the sort of equality impact and data around that, but we have less information on recruitment processes and how those are working as we have previously. It's sort of just a sort of list of bullet points in terms of things that are being done. So can you sort of explain what's going on with the changes to the data being shared? And also, specifically, I mean, we've had long expressed concerns about recruitment timescales, how long it takes to get people through the door. There's a couple of mentions in the sort of list of activities of things that might be happening, but no way really of recording that data or seeing improvement or really understanding what's being done. Could somebody give us a bit of information on that?
So we continue to make some changes to our recruitment process and our policies, and work really closely with, for example, our disability advisors who've been heavily involved in that recently, to help us look at it through a different lens. I think the other thing that we've done recently is move our internal recruitment across to the shared service as well, so we have the majority of our recruitment functions sort of sitting in the same place. We know, as you say, that it sometimes takes a long time to get through all stages of the process, and some of that is about our systems and continuing to refine those. So some of that's about once a vacancy becomes clear internally, then our internal approvals to get the role advertised. And some of it is about once we've recruited, the speed to get from the point of offer to actually get the new employee joining us, and that's sort of about the onboarding process, which is outsourced to an external organisation. I think that we are continually working with them to speed that up, but we know that there are some challenges there. We also know that we have some system challenges at our end, at the sort of front end of that process to get the sort of approvals through the system. And of course, at the moment, because of the outcome from the organisational change programme, we've been retaining lots of our vacancies for redeployment. So that's also had a bit of an impact on how we approach recruitment. But of course, there's always ways that we can continue to improve and streamline our approaches, which we continue to look at all the time. So our head of strategic resourcing works really closely with TfL and colleagues in our onboarding team to try and bring about some improvements. We've also, all of our recruitment now goes through the same system, which helps. But yeah, we know there is room for further improvement, I think.
Okay, thanks. That was also sort of a list of bullet points rather than anything concrete. So, do you have anything concrete about the length of time that it takes to get people through the door and whether that is improving or not?
I don't have that in front of me, I'm afraid. We can certainly provide that. We can draw that out of the system, I think.
Yeah, because like I say, there's lots of information about the demographics of people who are being recruited, but very little for anything else. And that's often what that's our concern, because obviously when vacancies are left open, that it takes a long time to get people through the door, then workload falls upon other people, and there's all sorts of negative effects on that. So it would be really good to see that I'm sure we've had that in the past. I'm sure we've talked about proper, in actual detail about that in the past and timescales. Diane, do you?
Thank you, Assemblymember Baker. I think you're correct. It's not been in the recent reports that we've produced. We will go away. I'll just reiterate Justine's point, though, which is we've actively held back a number of vacancies, particularly for the redeployment process. So we'll need to perhaps just factor in some period of time where there hasn't been active recruitment. And you're particularly interested.
I think that's perfectly reasonable, and it's almost like you can say, well, look, this didn't start going through the process until this point, but it's the amount of time it takes to go through the process once it's like this is something we're recruiting for that's really the crucial thing.
That data's not with us now. We'll get that.
And is there a reason that there is less information outside the demographics around recruitment in this report?
No,
because obviously you've still got the systems, so.
No, we'll certainly draw that data. I think anecdotally I can tell you that I think it's improving, but we'll pull the data for you over the period of time.
We like to see the numbers.
And we'll make sure that goes into future reports.
And from this one rather than in 6 months. And that's fine. So we can see what's on there. Just to what else have we got? I'm actually sorry. I wanted to go back. Apologies, Chair. Just wanted to go back on to the pay gaps which you referred to, and the disability pay gap, which has actually looks like it's pay gaps increased. You've also said that we've got an improvement in declarations over the past. So, can you tell us how much you think that is due to a higher level of declaration, and how are you going to monitor that going forward?
So I think it's hard to say how much of that is due to increased declaration rates. We know that we've seen an increase in the declaration rates. I think it's quite difficult to directly say because we've had X increase in declarations that's resulted in a X percentage impact on the pay gap. But equally we know that there've been significant increases in those declarations. I think that what will be interesting is to look at the pay gap data for this year. Obviously, once we see the data from March 26, which we are, I think, anticipating improves in relation to disability. But of course. We'll need to develop action plans and so on that sit around that new pay gap data. It's quite hard to draw a direct comparison, I think, between the two.
So it's something that you're not putting down to an increased declaration, and there is something that you're sort of going, OK, we're going to have to keep an eye on that.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
OK. I think number 4 is mostly about the...
It's amazing. Mainly, there's the workforce still needs to do it. Or, I think it's about the workforce and the mayoral priorities, whether it can be aligned.
That's so heavily impacted by the reorganisation. I'm not sure that the data we've got here is relevant for that. I did want to ask if we had. Last, I know this workforce report doesn't include information on the current reorganisation, but at the last meeting we did ask for an update on how many staff were still at risk and how many vacancies there were. I wonder whether you have an update on that, or if not, whether you can give us that.
I don't have an update for you today. Obviously, it's a changing picture day by day.
Yeah, it's nice to get another snapshot, though. So,
So this is a particularly priority period because we've got a lot of the ring fence interviews and it is changing. So we will need to come back and give you an update on a snapshot of the data.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, Assemblymember Baker.
Okay. Thanks. Just to continue on recruitment, and I guess to spark off what Assemblymember Baker just said, kind of putting to the side the reductions right now, which I think would have an impact on this. But looking at recruitment, we've seen a 30% drop in external applicants getting the jobs. I mean, there's two ways to view that, right? Is firstly, people being given the adequate training and support and mentoring and getting jobs and progressing, or people aren't applying to come and work here. I mean, one way to perhaps look at that would be the average number of applications, whether it stayed steady or decreased. Is there any data you could give us around that?
So I think that we are seeing increased number of applicants for most of our vacancies now. And I'll have to come back to you on the data on that specifically, but we know that we're definitely seeing increases in the number of applications for each of our vacancies at the moment, for sure.
Again, I would pick up the point around holding back a number of the vacancies for redeployment opportunities. So that's a very deliberate attempt to ensure that internal staff who were put at risk had other opportunities that they could apply for. The other one, just to flag as well, I think we haven't yet. We're about to shortly launch our apprenticeship, which will have also made a slight difference to the numbers because we're finishing the current apprenticeship programme, and that would add to the numbers as well. So some of that, Chair, is actually a deliberate decision on our part to ensure that where staff are at risk have been redeployed. I think Justine has picked up the other points in relation to the applicant numbers.
Okay, thank you. We still see this kind of continued growth of headcount even with the savings. Do you think that that's going to slow at all, or is that trajectory you see continuing? I know it's actually slowed down from where it was, but it's still rising. Is that something you see slowing down?
So there are a couple of bits I wouldn't mind picking up. One is around the establishment, where we haven't necessarily deleted some of those roles or tidied up some of the data on establishment. So establishment is definitely running higher than some of the headcount. But there are other programmes that we are delivering. There are some new programmes coming through which do require resources. We are making efficiency savings, and where possible, we are redeploying staff to ensure that we can move existing members of staff to new opportunities. But there are new programmes of work that do need to be delivered. So it is a sort of a constantly moving feast.
Okay. Just confirm new programmes to be delivered with separate funding.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you. My questions are for Phil on good growth. Just first of all, I just wondered if you could just give us a bit of an outline on your expectations on how the Savings and Efficiency Programme is going to change the good growth workforce. Just as a starter.
I mean, I think the Savings and Efficiency Programme, as well as responding to the financial context, building on the work that we've done to develop the delivery plans, it's also provided an opportunity in a number of areas to try and make sure that our staff structures reflect mayoral priorities. And so that's driving some change. I mean, we've spoken in previous sessions about sort of the impact of those changes in terms of differing shifts in different areas of my directorate. There's some reduction in staff numbers on the environment side. There's a smaller reduction in culture and creative industries. But within the context of those reductions, it's also allowed us to restructure to make sure that we're pointing what's left in the right direction. In other areas, there has been less or no change. For example, on planning and regeneration, recognising the very significant work going on around accelerating house building and to deliver a new London plan, there haven't been the same changes there. In terms of the impact on the workforce, in terms of the conversation that we have just been having in relation to diversity, I'm afraid I'm going to fall back on the fact that it's too early to say. I mean, I am working with my assistant directors to make sure that we, absolutely follow the requirements in terms of inclusive recruitment, where we're running ring fencing and other recruitment processes. We are continuing where we're not doing it at the moment, but in advance of the restructure, where there have been some senior jobs that went externally. We've worked very hard to generate diverse fields and secured diverse candidates for a decent proportion of those jobs. I suspect when we come back in September, my diversity statistics may have dropped, but that's because that's not because of job losses so much as the fact that the Economic Development and Programmes Unit, which is one of the more diverse in ethnicity terms areas of my directorate, is being broken up, and quite a lot of that will no longer be part of my directorate. So I don't think it will impact on the GLA in the same way, but it may impact on my numbers.
Okay, thank you. That's useful to understand. So, just thinking specifically about the team that's delivering culture, creative industries, and sort of 24-hour London, are you confident that you're going to have the staff capacity to support the new strategic licensing powers that have been granted to the mayor? Because I'm assuming that would be the team that would be looking at that kind of 24-hour London and involved in that piece of work.
Yes, that is the same team. And actually one of those senior roles that I was talking about that we recruited before the restructure began was the head of that strategic licensing team. As with any programme where you're trying to build a new team, there are challenges, around recruiting people with the right skills and the right expertise, and the fact that very often the work grows faster than recruitment processes can catch up. So we have been, in building that team, we have been we have had to use a reasonably high proportion of agency staff, which was why, to some degree, the agency staff in my area peaked a little while ago, started to fall down, but a number of those jobs are now being converted to permanent. We are recruiting new people through the redeployment process into that team. And we are just now, what we have had up to this stage has been a predominantly, not entirely, but predominantly a policy team focused on getting the right legislation in place, running a consultation, managing the responses to that, negotiating with government around writing a strategic licensing policy. We have now moved recently to start kicking off the recruitment of an actual licensing delivery team, where we will need to look to some degree outside of the GLA, because we're looking for people with direct licensing experience. We will be looking to recruit potentially from the boroughs and other areas. Mm-hmm. And coming back to Assembly Member Best's question, that's one of the areas where there has been, where we're building that new team on the basis of new funding provided via the GLA Mayor budget.
Mm-hmm. So, final question. Are you confident that you're going to, given that it feels like the Good Growth Directorate has had quite a lot of loss of headcount, are you confident that across all the areas that are covered in the directorate that you will have the strategic expertise and the delivery capability that is going to allow you to deliver? And particularly, I'm thinking about some of those senior roles that have been lost.
Short answer is yes, but that's yes on the basis, there are some people who are moving on from the GLA through this process in my directorate, some of whom are long-standing members of staff who will have developed, who will have brought with them and will have developed a lot of strong networks and relationships and subject matter expertise. Mm-hmm. And part of the challenge for us, and I'm talking particularly to Megan and to Shona in the environment team and the culture and the creative industries team, is making sure that we have the right handover arrangements in place and the right knowledge transfer arrangements in place to make sure that knowledge doesn't disappear as they move on to new roles or to the next phase of their career. I would say, though, along that, partly, there are a fair number of, there are people leaving, but it's still a relatively small proportion of the overall of those two teams, and there's a lot of retained expertise. And also, I think both in environment and in the culture team, part of the challenge that we had identified even before this restructure began was that subject matter expertise is very important, but a range of other skills are important as well, around delivery, around project management, around financial skills, and so on. And perhaps there have been parts of those units where we haven't quite got the balance right. So I think this restructure process, and I think the recruitment of the new lead for the strategic licensing program was a really good example of that. That's a really important program delivery, and we went deliberately out to recruit someone who had those kind of program delivery skills rather than someone necessarily from the culture sector. And so I think getting the balance, this has been an opportunity to try and make sure that we've got the balance right across each of those teams.
Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing how all of this pans out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Georgie.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to strategy and communication, strategy and communications has doubled in size, growing from 122 staff to 247 staff in just 3 years. Why has the Strategy and Growth Directorate seen such a significant increase in headcount? What are these new roles? Is this growth reflected in the performance of your directorate and outcomes for Londoners?
Thanks, Assembly Member. So it's grown primarily because it brought in resilience and merged the resilience teams that were previously in the fire service, London Fire Brigade. So it's grown primarily because of that. So that was previous years, and I think what you see over the last year is a stabilisation of the establishment, where the growth has been more in the region of 7. And so you've seen units come in, it grow, and now we're in a stabilisation prior to the savings and efficiency programme. So I think that's what's behind the numbers.
So 100% of that increase in strategy and communications is from you taking in the resilience team?
No, I'm not saying 100% is.
Right.
I'm saying primarily it is that, because it was the merging of two big teams.
It's primarily 10 people, 20 people, 50
I think
people?
the unit in total, if I remember correctly, is about 40 plus people.
Right. So we're way off, that being the primary increase. So once again, so we've seen an increase of, my numbers are 125 people, the growth in strategy and communications. You're saying 40 of those. Okay, so what are the rest of the 80 up to then?
I'd have to go away and check exactly what, but it predates my time here. So I inherited a team which is stabilised, Assembly Member.
I genuinely mean this in the best way possible. Surely, given this is your department, I've heard very good things about you. You do a great job. But how can you not know what the rest of these 80 people are doing?
I know exactly what my teams are doing now. I don't know what was there previously, Assembly Member. So when I came in, I inherited a number of, actually I joined this year, so during the period I inherited a number of about 240 odd people. I know exactly what that 240 odd people are doing. I don't know the history of how I ended up with that 240 previously. So whether that brought people in, whether that was new work, I'd need to go back and dig into that, Assembly Member, to give you an accurate answer. I don't want to make it up. I do know London Resilience was a new unit which we brought in with fire, and that's why I know that's the primary driver for the growth in that area, so just under 50. But I would have to go back and check on the rest.
But you had the answer as to how many people you took in from Resilience. So that was the 40.
Yes.
But you don't have an answer for the 80.
I know the Resilience because they came in just before I arrived, and there's been lots of things I've been working through with them about their job descriptions and about the organisation of that team.
Okay, thank you. Could you please write to us?
Of course.
With that, so I would greatly appreciate that. And I hope you'll be able to answer this one. Once again, I appreciate you've come within the year, so I understand that point. Can you identify any major communications activities that Londoners are receiving today that were not received before this significant expansion?
Yes. So, of course, there has been quite a lot of activity around the weather, the changes in the climate. There's been some activity around the good news in local boroughs and events that have been going on there. We've had a very strong Loved and Belonging campaign, which has been predominantly across London and focused in areas where we are doing major programmes. To name a few, would you like more, or is that?
No, I mean, you've said increased activity. Well, increased activity doesn't equals increased engagement from Londoners. You know, you can hire 1 million comms officers, but, you know, the number of people that might engage with your service or what we do in this place does not necessarily correlate. I mean, so you've mentioned climate. Well, all my colleagues around this table, not all of them actually, many of them have been saying, you know, London's burning for the last 10 years. But, you know, has the perception, has Londoners' knowledge or the impact of climate change increased over that 10 years? I suspect not, given the number of politicians, given the amount of comms that have been coming from City Hall, has, you know, the output has gone up, but the level of impact and people's understanding of it, I feel like, has remained the same. I don't think there's more Londoners telling me today that climate change is real has changed as when, you know, I started in politics 12 years ago. So that's why I asked the question. Activity. So can you demonstrate the increase in the size of your team, the level of activity has resulted in more engagement from Londoners?
To answer your specific question about more engagement, I can't say there has been an X percentage increase. I don't know the numbers. I'd have to come back to you on that. But do we see a lot of engagement across the external relations? Absolutely. So so external relations covers major events. It also covers the communications that go out from City Hall, as well as those that we do on with other partners as well. So just to take major events, our events are well attended, they are publicised well, and we are getting good throughput on that. To get public engagement, we've got adverts, as you know, Assembly Member on TfL and also across London. And my understanding is, and I'd need to go back and get you the numbers to answer your question specifically to demonstrate whether it's more or stayed the same, is that level of engagement is very high. I was looking at the Good News campaign recently, and again, we did the pilot just leading into March, and the pilot showed really positive results in terms of the level of engagement that people were clicking onto things, watching things and seeing things.
Fine. I mean, it would be helpful if you actually gave us some metrics, because what I've heard is engagement is high. Well, is it higher than when your team doubled, or is it the same? You know, and I think that's what I'm trying to get at. You know, are the events numbers the same? You know, Assembly Member Mahfouz makes exceptional TikTok videos, which I love. We all love them. You know, are his views higher now or than they were then? You know, I think that's the point that I'm getting at. So, yeah, if we could have some breakdown, proper numbers and metrics from, let's take an arbitrary timeline from 3 years ago before your team doubled to date. I don't care about the output. I care about if we've seen improvement in engagement. Use any sort of metric you want. Well, maybe not, because you might fudge it a little bit. But you know,
I want to assure you that would not be.
No, Chandra, I know you're a very honest person. You're not a politician. You know, I think we just need some clear metrics, because I think when you do come back in the future to justify the significant increase in your team, caveating the resilience bit with the 40 additional people, we take that to one side and we just talk about a net increase of 80. I think it would be good to get some metrics.
Of course.
So therefore, I don't ask the questions again.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Did you? I heard you say you would do that. Is it okay? You think you've got enough data to be able to tell us who that extra 80 is?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And is that a commitment to come and tell us a bit more around the unfudged metrics of how
Yes, Chair. I think we're due to see you in September about communications as a whole.
We're hoping so, yes.
And I'll hopefully be able to bring that.
Are you sure you're going to want to come back?
I think we'll be digging a lot more into some of those campaigns that you briefly mentioned then. So thank you. If I could come on to you, Tim, and just ask if you had any thoughts that you wanted to share with the committee as a result of the workforce report on your directorate.
Hi there, and sorry to be late. I suppose on the theme we've just been talking about, headcount, there have also been increases in headcount in the Housing and Land Directorate over the last few years. They are, I think, reasonably straightforward to plot in terms of the additional activity which is going on, and they all are resulting from new programme activity, and particularly things which have come from the spending review. Clearly housing is a big shared priority for government and the mayor, and new programme activities come through in terms of long-term affordable homes programme, funding for City Hall Developer programme, New Homes Accelerator, and a number of areas like that. So, if there's any information wanted there around the detail of some of that headcount growth, then I can certainly provide more of that.
What kind of roles are you prioritising with that funding? What kind of experience and expertise are you prioritising bringing into the team?
It depends a bit on which programme it is, and all of the funding we've got is specific for programme by programme. On something like the Affordable Homes programme, that is really a programme management role. So we're looking for people with programme management. Equally, we do need some housing expertise in the team, and so getting that balance right between housing expertise and generalist programme management expertise is really important, and making sure that the overall makeup of those teams is right. In other areas, it genuinely varies kind of area by area, and we put out, as we advertise for those roles, we are putting out the skills that we need.
I think it'd be widely accepted that the delivery of the housing and land team for the GLA hasn't been great. I think from the Kerslake review to the government's own interventions with the mayor, I'm just interested how, through the workforce, those challenges are recognised, and if there's anything different you're looking for from people to ensure we have better delivery.
I think that the delivery around housing is really impacted by the external environment in which we're working. Housing delivery across London and the UK has been incredibly challenged over the last few years with external factors around, which have been well rehearsed in the Housing Committee space. So I won't go into the detail, but those the difficulties that our delivery partners face are much bigger than, in a way, what the Housing and Land team can offer. They are fighting against very significant constraints in capitalisation, for example, in the housing associations. We are seeking to be a team which is kind of flexible and responsive and can work with partners who are in that situation. And those are the kinds of, that's the kind of approach that we're looking to kind of build in the Housing and Land team. And I think if you would speak to our partners, I think you would get a sense that we are kind of offering those kind of relationships where we're seeking to kind of meet them where they are and provide whatever we can in terms of kind of limited funding resources that we've got.
I'd say that the funding resources are much better than many other regions in the UK would tell you that they have. And it's disappointing because the question is not about the challenges that everybody faces, and we could sit here and I could argue why London's performance doesn't match up to where it should be. But the point of the question is there hasn't been delivery. How are you using the workforce to fill those gaps, to look at challenges? And there didn't seem, Tim, much in there. Is there nothing within the workforce that you think you can look at to try and overcome some of these challenges?
We have to try and recruit the best, do the best recruitment we can, and we get really good interest in our roles. We get interest. We've got really good progression internally, and we're progressing our own talent and developing that through kind of training and development. We recruit really well from external partners as well, around the housing sector and beyond. And I think we do get very skilled and experienced people into the team. I'm not sure that is the kind of major constraint that we face.
Thanks. Assemblymember Georgiou.
I think, Tim, I'll have, only to be fair to my good friend Chandru over there, I'll give you the same treatment. In terms of, right, let me put this in a more straightforward way. How long have you been in your role, your current role?
Since 2022.
Right, since 2022. So let's say 4 years. Do you remember what the size of your team was when you started to where it is today?
I mean, it's in the documents, but I think it was around the kind of 200 odd level.
When you started?
Yeah, I think so.
And what's it today?
I think it's about 240, 250.
Right, okay. So 250, so what was that, 25% increase or whatever? Right. In terms of over those 4 years then, looking year on year, has the output, and once again we'll look at metrics in terms of planning permissions given, units built, affordable units built, have they all gone up or down? 4 years is a long enough period to take out of account external factors.
Just to say that planning doesn't fall into my area. So
okay, we'll just say housing numbers then.
I mean, housing numbers across London are really challenged, but I don't think...
I know it's challenged. That wasn't the question that I asked. But the numbers going up or they're going down?
Well, they've been in a really challenged place for that whole period. It's been really difficult. I think what I'd say is that the work that my team does supports as good a delivery as possible in these really challenged circumstances. But I could have 1,000 people in my team, and that wouldn't be the defining factor about whether we can kind of achieve better housing delivery or not.
Oh well, if it's not the defining factor, why do you keep hiring more people for the same result?
I mean, I'm not sure it would be the same result. If we'd had, the counterfactual, could be a lot worse. We are, struggling to deliver as best we possibly can in very difficult circumstances. And in many cases, the complexity of the work which needs to be done in my team has only increased. If you look at a space like GLA, which is the Mayor's own land holdings, because of the challenges our partners face, so many of those agreements have needed attention over the last few years, needed renegotiation, and have needed that capacity in the team to achieve that. But without that, then these schemes would have failed.
But the one thing I think, Tim, look, it's clearly the word of the day today is challenging. If you had said to me, you know what, Assemblymember Georgiou, yes, we've had a 25% increase in the town, in the team, external challenges, X, Y, and Z, but you know what, if it hadn't been that increase, that 25% increase, we wouldn't have been able to get this number of sites online by navigating the processes that we've had to do. If you had said that to me, I'd say fair enough, but that wasn't the response that you gave. Now, I mean, is that something you want to elaborate on, going down that route? It's not for me to help out, but I'm just curious.
I think you need to look kind of almost programme by programme. We are looking to try and achieve 20,000 odd starts on the Affordable Homes Programme, 21 to 26 by September. If we didn't have the staff in place to do that, then we wouldn't be getting near those targets. We've just set up a new team called the New Homes Accelerator, which is to try and support stalled sites in London. We are supporting a number of sites in that area now. We've had a number of kind of wins already. We can set out what that programme's doing in a bit more detail, but without those staff, then that activity wouldn't be happening. We've had the building safety teams expanded a lot over the last few years as we've set up a new programme with new government funding to try and remediate buildings as quickly as possible. Again, without people in the team to do that, it would, that remediation wouldn't have happened. And we've got those buildings which have been completed now as a result of the people working in the team.
Okay. I think what would be helpful, I'll leave it there, but I just think what would be helpful is to make it fair, because I've asked the same thing of Chandru, if we're looking at your tenure specifically, so from in your current role, when you started to date, number of staff and by year, not completions, but starts, because that's what you've referenced, is a key target, starts, and the correlation, what I'd be more interested in, the correlation between the increase in staff and the particular projects and how we've seen things sped along. You've mentioned building safety, so that would be helpful, how we're clearing the backlog on remediation. I think that would be helpful for the committee moving forward.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Maybe it would help with the workload of staff, though. If Enfield gets rid of this new town and Cruise Hill development, then they'll be freed up for other bits. Who knows? Let's to Assembly Member Mahfouz.
Thank you. Deanne and Justine, so understandably, very often when there are savings being made across the board, it's your area that gets the disproportionate cuts, core services, HR and so on. How are you ensuring that you've got sufficient resources? Obviously, at the moment, your workload must be increased with supporting the restructures that are happening, but both in terms of the short term, but also in terms of the business as usual going forward.
Thank you, Assembly Member Mahfouz. I was actually going to make the point also to Assembly Member Baker, who does regularly ask in terms of the number of fixed-term contracts and agency workers, that this is something that is regularly under review. And we, as a corporate management team, particularly in light of the savings programme, have done a review of every single agency worker that we have. Having said that, you'll have picked up from the report that our agency workers has slightly raised, partly because one is we've chosen to hold vacancies, so where we've got some work, we've wanted to do that. But there are some sort of three areas that we are bringing agency workers in and fixed-term contracts, partly around covering vacancies, partly about supplementing teams where we've got heavy workload, and also around bringing in specialist skills that we don't have in-house. So we've got some major change programmes going on. You'll be aware that we've just completed the IT shared services, which completed around about sort of February, March time. We had a number of staff who to be transferred over from the GLA over to TfL. So we made a very deliberate decision to bring in temporary staff, agency staff, to cover some of those roles, because what we didn't want to do is have to make further transitions and transfer over. We've got the organisational change programme, where we have brought in a lot of specialist skills, getting the managing the programme through permanent resources, through our leadership. Or change, for example, was driven by our chief officer, with corporate management team and with the assistant directors. So it is getting that right balance of having permanent members of staff, but supplementing the specialist skills that we've got, particularly at the time where we've got that increased workload or we're needing those additional skills.
So at the moment, you were referring to reviewing a number of FTC's fixed-term contracts and agency staff that you've got on the books. What are the controls? We were talking about, obviously, audit and controls earlier on, particularly around those financial controls. How do you ensure that every single agency placement and fixed-term contract is signed off appropriately in the first place, that there is a business case that is made, and who signs off on that?
So one is we are starting to monitor and look at agency controls, particularly in light of the org change programme, through our regular people board, which is a corporate management team meeting focused on all the people agenda. So there is a regular presentation looking at the agency workers. The process for agency workers has to go up to executive director sign off. So the system there means that we have to look at the business case that is made and ensure that we get sign off for that. As my point as well is that there are times now where the agency workers are beneficial in terms of safeguarding some of those more permanent roles, but also particularly where we've got specialist skills that we just don't have in-house.
And is there a particular period that you would say beyond that point an agency member of staff should actually be on the books permanently?
Yes, I mean, what we are noticing is that we are getting a reduction in the number of what we have particularly targeted where we've had agency workers for long periods of time. So we do look at the duration of where there are agency workers and have been there for a considerable amount of time. But we are then also managing quite a lot of transition at the moment. So that is part of our policy, that we are looking to have to make sure that our agency workers are only really in for those three particular areas. But if we are retaining them for a longer periods of time, IT Shared Services was an example where the programme took much longer than we had originally anticipated, and with the cyber attack that we had, it delayed a lot of that programme. So we do need to have that balance of making sure that we've got the right resources in, but recognising that some of these change programmes have taken a little bit longer than we would like. So I think one of the things that we are particularly targeting is where those vacancies are covering established posts. We want to make sure that we are going out to recruit through that to bring in the right members of staff as well.
And so how regularly would that be reviewed by the People Board, I'm presuming, in terms of if somebody was on the books for 2+ years as an agency worker?
So we regularly look at our agency workers, both within our own directorates, and it's brought into our monthly People Board. And we, particularly in light of this programme, the head of resourcing did an assurance process across all of our agency workers. So every one of us has had to go through and make sure that we are absolutely clear there is a justification for each agency worker that we've got, or a plan in place.
Yeah, fair enough. And I guess making sure that plan is stuck to as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you feel that there's enough resources within HR in order to keep on top of this as well?
Yes, we have supplemented the HR resources. So a number of the highest proportion of agency workers are in my own directorate, which is so. A number of those are also related to the organisational change programme and other change programmes. So we have definitely supplemented the area of specialist resources that we've got, particularly in the people function, where we haven't had the experience of skills of doing organisation change or some of the other programmes that we're looking at as well. The enterprise resourcing programme, ERP, is another area where we don't have those skills internally. So we are starting to bring in specialist skills around that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Deanne, could you tell us the total value of recognition payments for 25-26? Or, sorry, Justine.
Sorry, I've got lots of data. I'm just going through it.
That's okay. I don't have any other questions, otherwise I'd say I'd come back to it. Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure we have the total value of recognition payments.
Every day was learning.
I'm sorry, I don't have the total amount of all of the recognition payments.
Would you be able to provide that to committee, but can you give me a ballpark today? I heard Assembly Member Georgie say $1 billion for Bassam, and I'm guessing that's not correct. Is there
So I can tell you the average payment, which I realise isn't what you're asking. Yeah, no. I am sorry, I can't, but I will write to you and give you that data.
Could you write to us with the total value of recognition payments for 25-26 and the average via any means that you prefer?
I will do, yes.
Yeah. But finally, I do want to ask about the ways in which these were paid. How were the staff identified that would receive recognition payments?
So they're nominated by colleagues. So anyone can nominate one of their colleagues to receive a recognition payment, and then those nominations are considered by each directorate leadership team who consider whether to make that award.
Okay, that's really interesting. I'm taking it that the figure you probably do have in front of you is that 76% of payments were given to female members of staff.
Yes.
That's 20, so meaning, I presume, around 24% of payments went to male staff. We already have, and we've talked about this for many years actually, how we have a overrepresentation in terms of the workforce population of women within the GLA. And I have said this is something we need to look at, because if this were, and this is a situation for many women will recognise that for years in a workplace, work hasn't been given its merit, because there's kind of a male dominance which prefers its friends and people that looks like it. And now we could be seeing a new kind of that, where we have a overly representative female population, where maybe you're seeing the merit in people that look like you and recognising them for awards. And now you see, if you're a man here, you're very unlikely to get a recognition. Is that something that you see as needing perhaps a little bit of a look at to make sure that equal opportunity is being given to staff?
Yeah, I mean, we continue to monitor quite closely and scrutinise recognition payments, and particularly their impact on pay gaps overall, which are sort of separated out, obviously, in the pay gap data and classified under bonuses. So yes, and hence why actually recognition payments all go through directorate leadership teams for scrutiny. So there's quite a wide group of people, therefore, considering each award of each recognition payment. But yes, you're right. We continue to monitor them closely and understand what's going on, and scrutinise the reasons for applications, and understand the impact of each application where it were awarded on pay gaps overall. So we do look at it quite closely. Yes. I don't know if
is that something you've looked at?
So we continue to monitor them over time, I think. Once we've...
But is the fact that 76% went to women and 24% went to men, is that something specifically you've looked at?
So not specifically to date. I think that we will. And I think that once we look at this year's pay gap data, again, we'll see if there's been any change over that period, an impact on the pay gaps overall. I don't know if colleagues might want to talk about what happens in your own directorates around the award of recognition payments, but yeah, we haven't particularly identified reasons why more women are getting recognition payments than men. No.
Is it, and just to, because I'm not very familiar with how no one's nominated me, so I'm not very familiar with how they work. But the 77%. Yeah, it was like so. Is there a limit on grade, or are they targeted towards those on lower grades?
There isn't a limit on grade, no. So any body can be nominated.
And do you get a breakdown of what grade they're going to?
Yes, we do that, and that information is provided into the directorate leadership, or certainly in CRBI we provide that information.
We got that in the workforce report. Is there any way when you send us the data you can break it down by grade as well?
Yes, we can do that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was, Assembly Member George.
Justine, I feel like your use of the word monitoring is similar to Tim's use of the word challenging. When you say you will monitor the situation, you know, that's all well and good, but what does that actually mean? You're just going to look at it and say, well, we know it's happening, and therefore, but are you going to, because I feel like Assembly Member Best was looking for something a bit more concrete as to what actions could be taken, and if the actions are none, and the answer is, as Margaret Thatcher said, if you want something done, ask a woman. If you want something said, ask a man. You know, if that's the answer that comes back, fine. But, you know, what does that mean you'll monitor and look at it?
So I think it depends, you know, in the case of recognition payments, for example, we need to understand what's going on, and when we get applications in, to understand or help each directorate leadership team to understand whether what actions then might need take place in each area of the organisation to bring about a change. So when we look at the pay gap results, for example, for each year, we'll develop a pay gap action plan, and then following on from that, we'll continue to monitor throughout the year, and then we also have a series of challenge sessions that take place throughout the year at which the Chief Officer will then discuss what's happening in each directorate around each area. So that might be recruitment, or it might be recognition payments, or it might be any other area. And so we'll pick up, any specific actions that need to take place in individual directorates or units. Because
now I feel like you're almost combining recognition payments with the pay gap, which surely if you do that and looking at the two, it would disadvantage women if you were to compare the two in terms of the pay gap, because the answer could come back, well, 76% of women are receiving the recognition payments, therefore we don't have to be too concerned about the pay gap. So you go down a dangerous line that way if I wouldn't mix the two, but I'm not the professional here.
So the bonus payments, which are described as bonus payments for the purposes of pay gap, are, in our case, our recognition payments that we classify as bonus payments that are separated out in the pay gap data. So we have the pay gap data that's identified by salary, and then a separate sort of line around bonus payments. And I just use those as an example, really, about what we do about monitoring and how we then take action on that monitoring. So it's not just that we're looking at that annually and then developing a plan. It's about how we then continually address those things through, be it directorate leadership teams or challenge sessions or any other intervention, people board, CMT, etc., as to how we pick those things up then throughout the year. So if, for example, to pick on Chandru, if he had a particular issue, we'd be talking to him about that and addressing that through his leadership team.
Have you got an issue,
He wants
Chandru?
to say something.
I've got many issues, Assembly Member Georgia, and I'm sure my wife will agree. But I think on this particular thing, I absolutely feel a responsibility to make sure that the payments and recognition payments within my area are being done in a way that is not biased, in a way that we are challenging ourselves to make sure that we as a leadership team take ownership of the outcomes that are being delivered since I've joined. And that's done in several ways. So as Justine said, the Chief Officer does have regular challenge sessions with us on our data and ask us what steps we are taking to make sure that happens. Equally, across my leadership team within my directorate, we will meet to discuss who are getting the recognition payments to make sure that the justification for the individual getting it is right. And across that, we will try to keep a track of, is there a disproportionate recognition payments going to a particular group, which may be revealing a bias within us as a leadership team or the nominations coming through, so we can start to talk to people and give those that may have not been able to get the opportunity to step into more challenging positions to get the opportunity so that they can demonstrate that they also deserve a recognition payment. So I just want to say that we are taking steps. It's never perfect, right? And it's going to be a constant challenge.
Sadly, off the back of what you and Justine have just said, I have one final question, which is, and to make clear, I actually don't care. If the 76% of those being recognised are women and they're doing a better job, I couldn't care less, quite frankly. They deserve that money. But let me ask you this, given you said we have to make sure it's fair and proportionate, if it was 76% men, I feel like there would have been a very different response today.
I don't think so, if it's okay, Assembly Member Georgia.
You could disagree, it's okay.
Yes, I do. Partly because what we are doing when it comes to us as leadership team is checking whether the justification for the individual getting the recognition payment is at the level that we would expect them to get it at. We don't then say yes or no. If it's at the level, it's a yes. But what we then look at is the nominations that are coming through the system to us as a leadership team proportionate to what we would expect of the workforce that we have. Now, if it isn't, it doesn't mean we suddenly push towards trying to rectify that, but what we are looking at are those people that are not getting it, getting the opportunity to get it because they're given more challenging work or additional work, or are being recognised by colleagues. So I think I would take the same approach if it was the other way around.
I just think not you guys necessarily, because I'm sure this predates all of you, this organisation has created an incentive scheme which makes the people that we have in front of us a hostage to fortune with these sorts of questions. So personally, I would revise the scheme and therefore make it more equitable, and you may end up with the same result. But that's just an opinion. I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you. As we've come to an end, I can't see any other hands. So can I thank you all for coming today and dealing with the challenging questions. It's only because we all love the GLA so much that we want it to be the best it can be. Yeah, but thank you so much. Can I ask the committee to note the GLA workforce report for the year ending 31st of March 2026? Thank you. The proposed amendments for the probation procedure and probation terms and condition. This item, the proposed amendments to the probation conditions has been pulled and will be resubmitted to a future oversight meeting. In terms of our work programme, sorry, everyone, you can feel free to leave. Sorry. Stay, it's fun. Can I ask the committee to note the work programme and meeting dates for 26, 27? The next meeting of the committee is scheduled to take place on the 8th of July at 10 o'clock, and we've been demoted to the committee rooms 2 and 3. There's no other... that is very challenging. There is no other business that I consider urgent, so we'll close today's meeting.
London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.